This video shows you how to bill a load in Transport Pro. We will also show how to navigate the billing dashboard. Billing users will log into Transport Pro and likely start their day on the billing dashboard. If you aren't here when you log into the system, you can get to the billing dashboard by going to Billing Dashboard. This dashboard shows several general billing statistics, as well as the action items for billing users. For example, billing users will be able to see here how many loads in the system have been delivered, are waiting for documents, and still need to be billed. Please note that although this is technically a billing and collections dashboard, this video will only cover billing, as not all customers may be using Transport Pro's Accounts Receivable module to record the payments against loads. If you do want to learn more about our collections AR system, please see our AR guide. You can see that the blue text represents hyperlinks, so you can click on any of these numbers or statistics to be redirected to this list of loads in this particular queue. Let's run through and define what each statistic or queue means. Loads delivered, not billed. This is the number of loads in the system that have been delivered. Not all of the required documents have been indexed yet, and the loads have not yet been billed. You can click on this stat to get redirected to this list of loads. From here, a billing user will go into each load, upload the required documentation, make sure all of the information on the load looks correct, and then approve the load for billing, or in other words, mark the load ready to bill. Loads delivered, docs received, not billed, RTB, or in other words, ready to bill. This is the number of loads in the system that have been delivered. All of the required documentation has been indexed, but the loads have not yet been approved for billing. A billing user can click on this number to be redirected to this list of loads. From there, the user can go into each load, review it for accuracy, and then approve the load for billing. Loads delivered, docs received, not billed, locked. This is the number of loads that have been delivered. All of the required documentation has been indexed. The loads have not yet been approved for billing, and there is a billing hold on these loads for some reason. A billing user can click on this number to get redirected to this list of loads, and then run through each load, review the reason that the load was placed on a billing hold, and from there, the billing user can determine if the billing lock should be removed and approve the load for billing, or perhaps they need to leave it locked for now. Loads with billing lock. This is the number of loads that have been locked for billing, or in other words, someone has put a billing hold on these loads, regardless of the dispatch status of the load. So a little bit different than the previous statistic. A billing user, again, can click on this number to get redirected to this list, go into each load, review the reason that the load was placed on a billing hold, and from there, determine if the lock should be removed and approve the load for billing, or perhaps they need to leave it locked. Waiting for documents. This is the number of loads that have been approved for billing, or in other words, have been marked ready to bill without having all of the required documentation on file. You can click on this number to be redirected to the Waiting for Documents queue. You'll also find this queue if you go to Billing, Load Queues, Waiting for Documents. Think about this queue in the billing system as a safeguard that the system has in place to ensure that users aren't sending off billing packets to customers with missing documents. If you navigate to the Waiting for Documents queue, which we'll do here, and you hit search, you'll see a list of the loads that have been approved for billing without the required documentation on file. So a user perhaps accidentally marked the load for billing and didn't realize they were missing documents, or perhaps for a particular load, you didn't need that typically required document, it would fall in here. It would end up here. So here you can see which documents are missing against each load. You'll also see a green arrow out to the right. At this point, the user can click on the load ID to go into the load and then index that missing documentation, or you can click the green arrow out to the right to push the load through to be processed without that documentation. Pending freight bills. This is the number of loads in the system that have been approved for billing, or in other words, have been marked ready to bill, but have not actually been billed or sent off to the customer or factoring company yet. These loads are sitting in the pending freight bills queue. You can also navigate to this queue by going to Billing, Load Queues, Freight Bill Processing Queue. It's from this queue where the billing occurs. Queued for print. This is the number of loads that have been processed for billing, meaning that the billing packet has been generated for these loads, but the billing packet is sitting in this print queue, waiting to be printed from your local printer. Loads will only fall into this queue if you have customers set up to receive hard copies of their billing deliverables. You can also get to this queue by going to Billing, Load Queues, Freight Bill Print Queue. Assuming you're doing everything electronically, you probably won't ever need to visit this queue. But you may have a customer or two that still requires snail mail. Loads queued for rebill. This is the number of loads in the system that are currently unlocked for rebill, meaning that a user unlocked a load that's already been approved for billing, likely to make a change or an edit to the load. However, the load was never actually rebilled or finished out. A billing user would want to go through any of these loads and make sure that any necessary changes were made, and then push the load through the rebill process. Rebilling loads will be covered in a separate guide. There is a helpful tip. If you navigate to a load summary screen, you'll be able to see the load's dispatch, document, and billing status here. So if you're ever wondering where a load is at in the billing process, it's always helpful to look to the load status here on the load summary page as well. Now that we are familiar with what billing statistics on the dashboard mean, let's actually walk a load through the billing process. Once a load has been delivered and all of the required documentation has been indexed, then it's time to process the load for billing. So to bill a load, you'll want to get to the load summary screen. Then click Edit Load Information. Next, scroll down to the bottom of the load information page and check the Ready to Bill box. This approves the load for billing. Note that there are a couple of fields on the load that become required by default at the time of billing, and that's the bill of lading field and the weight field. So before approving the load for billing or marking it ready to bill, make sure that you do have values entered here in these fields. Otherwise, when we go to save the load, you'll get an error. Also note that if you are a brokerage company billing a load with a broker carrier dispatched, then when you mark a load ready to bill, 2 fields will become available just below the ready to bill box where you can enter the carrier invoice number and the date. If you don't have that information at this point, or you forget to enter it here, don't worry. You will have an opportunity to enter this information at the time of settlement. Once you check the Ready to Bill box, save the record. Approving the load for billing does 3 things. One, the system generates the freight bill and places it in the file history section on the load with the rest of the required documentation that has been indexed. Two, the system generates any pending settlement entries, and you can see a snapshot of those pending entries from here on the load summary screen. And three, the system creates the open load balance against the customer. Please note that Transport Pro is an accrual-based accounting system, not a cash-based accounting system. So it's at the time of billing that these accounting transactions occur. Once the load has been approved for billing, it gets sent over to the freight bill processing queue. So once all of the loads have been approved for billing, then step number 2 is to navigate to the freight bill processing queue where you can process the billing at once. So now we'll go to billing, load queues, freight bill processing queue. Here you will see all of the loads that have been approved for billing. You can check the box at the top to select all of the loads in this queue, or check the box out to the right of the individual loads you may want to process. You'll also see that there are several filter options in this queue, which may be helpful if you have a lot of loads to be processed, but perhaps you only want to process a specific customer's loads, for example. Once you have selected the loads you want to process, click the Send to Customer button at the bottom of the page. You have just billed your customers with this step. Note, there are 2 things that occur here when you hit that Send to Customer button. 1, the system combines the freight bill with the index supporting documentation and creates the billing packet for you in a PDF format. A copy of the billing packet gets saved to the load itself in that file history section on the load. And 2, the system sends the billing packet out to the customer. So if you are billing your customers directly, you have completed the billing process with this step. This is, of course, also assuming that you do bill your customers electronically. Therefore, the packet gets emailed to the customer here. Now, if you are using a factoring company, then there's one more step to your billing process. After you hit the Send to Customer button, the billing packet gets created, but then it gets sent to our factoring queue. So next, you'll go to Billing, Load Queues, Submit Factoring Invoices. You'll check everything you wish to send to the factoring company, and then hit the Transfer button. So once you hit that Transfer button, you have now transferred your schedules directly from Transport Pro to your factoring company. Please note, we can support any factoring company as long as your factoring company supports FTP. Getting your installation set up with your factoring company is typically part of your setup process, but it can be implemented for you at any point in time. If you do need to get this integration set up between Transport Pro and your factoring company, please contact us at support@transportpro.net, and our support team will get that set up for you. It's also important to note that if you do use a factoring company and you're sending your schedules from Transport Pro to your factoring company, this is where the integration ends. Later on, when the customer pays the invoice, it will not talk back to Transport Pro automatically to record the collections or to show the load is paid. You will either enter a cash receipt in Transport Pro, if you're recording this information in Transport Pro, or you'll record this information in QuickBooks or any other outside accounting system you may be using. Either way, payment received will need to be entered by a back office system user. One other thing I'd like to cover on this video is how to set any billing preferences for customers. So There are a few key pieces of billing information that you'll want to check on your customers' profiles before you start billing loads out of Transport Pro. Let's navigate to a customer profile by going to Customers, search Customers, click on the customer ID to open up their profile, and I'm going to go into edit mode here to show you where to set these things. So the three main fields that you'll want to review are factor payments, deliverable receipt options, and billing email. Let's define each field and talk about how that works in conjunction with our billing system. Factor payments. If you are using a factoring company and this customer's invoices need to go to factoring, then you should have your factoring company selected from this drop-down menu on the customer profile. This setting will tell the system to send the billing packet to the factoring transfer queue so that you can send it off to factoring. If you do not factor and you only bill your customers directly, you'll leave it alone and you'll leave it set as not factored. Again, note, if you do not see your factoring company listed in this dropdown, it's just because we haven't set you up with that integration yet. So please email us at support@transportpro.net so we can help you get that set up. Deliverable receipt options. How does this customer need to receive their billing deliverables? If you are using a factoring company, and nothing needs to go directly to the customer, then you simply do not need to check anything here. If this is a direct bill and you're billing the customer directly electronically, then you'll check email here. If you bill this customer directly and this customer requires a hard copy of the billing packet, then you'll check hard copy. Billing email. So if you are billing this customer directly via email, then you must enter a valid billing email as well. This tells the system at the time of billing to send the packet to this customer to this email. You can enter multiple emails separated by a comma if needed. Now you'll also see some other billing related fields on the customer records in Transport Pro. And depending on the customer's billing preferences, these additional fields may be helpful. Let's break down what each one does, and your billing team can determine whether or not they need to use them. Combined billing. This box should only be checked if you do not need to break out the line items or accessorials on the invoice to this customer. In other words, the customer prefers to see their bill as one lump sum. This is very rare, but it's here if you need it. Specialty billing. You can check this box if there is something special about billing this customer. If you check this box, the system will show you a notification at the time of marking the load ready to bill, simply to remind you that there's something special about billing this customer. Specialty billing notes. If you have checked the box for specialty billing, then you may wish to make a note or document what that entails exactly. For example, maybe you have to go to their website. This note will show to you at the time of billing, along with that specialty billing notification. So think about the specialty billing options here as the ability to set a reminder for yourself for this customer. External billing notes. If there is a specific note or comment that needs to display on all of the invoices for this customer, then you can enter a note here. Then when the system generates the invoice for this customer, it will pull this note onto their invoice. And that covers how to bill a load in Transport Pro, as well as the billing dashboard and some of those billing settings on your customer profiles. We will cover the rebill process in a separate guide and video. If you have any questions or need assistance, please contact technical support by emailing support@transportpro.net. Thank you for watching this video.